Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to be here today to review the NVAR Standard Form Changes, and these are the form changes that are effective July 1st, 2021. As I go through this presentation, just a housekeeping note here, I will not be able to answer any questions, but please feel free to add questions to the chat box and I'll get back to you, or email me directly and I will follow up with you. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, my name is Colleen Sweeney and I'm the managing attorney at the MBH Fair Oaks office. I'm a former litigation attorney and I feel so lucky to now be involved in an industry that celebrates legal transactions. With my background, I was in the courtroom for many years, often working with clients that entered into contracts which were ambiguous or very flawed. And truthfully, from that experience, I can say that I see tremendous value in these NVAR forms, which was why I was so excited to be involved today. These forms are clear, concise, and comply with the necessary legal requirements. And they really are a tremendous asset to the real estate community. In the legal community, we say there's no such thing as a perfect contract. However, with each iteration of these forms, they get closer. We know that the forms allow buyers and sellers of real estate agents, and title companies to allow transactions to occur in an efficient manner without ambiguity. And so all the parties understand the terms. At MBH, it is our goal to partner with you and help you grow your business. One of the ways we can add value to your business is to provide you information on the form changes before they go into effect. And my goal is to do that for you today. Okay, I want to first start with a sincere thank you to the NVAR Forms Committee and members of the Attorney Roundtable and the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors. A lot of work was put into these forms to update them to ensure they comply with the complex changes to the law this year. So thank you very much. I'm honored to be part of this. I think it's fair to say that 2021 has been a year like no other. And while that's true for the world as a whole, it's also really true for the Northern Virginia real estate community. It's been a year of adapting, pivoting, and thankfully thriving in the Northern Virginia real estate community. And the NVAR forms are a tremendous asset which has helped us all grow our business during these challenging times. Well, it's fair also to say, because it's been such a difficult year, we all deserve some good news. In preparing for this presentation, I watched Ryan Stewart discuss the form changes last year, and there were significant changes to the residential sales contract, and he reminded everyone to remain calm. And so after all the adapting we have done over the last year, it seems well deserved that we have some good news. And that is, there's no changes to the body of the residential sales contract in Virginia this year. I would say in saying this, I realize there's a risk that many of you may leave this webinar, but hang in there because there are changes which I want to walk you through that are going to help you with your business. My goal is to do this in an efficient manner, so it will be available use of about 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the substantive changes. Okay, specifically, there are 4 changes to the NVAR forms this year. The first one is NVAR Form K-1387. This is entitled Landlord Notice regarding non-payment of rent. The second one is NVAR Form K-1388, the Payment Plan Addendum. The third is NVAR Form K-1354, or the Lease. And finally, we have NVAR Form K-1392, or Referral Agreement. This is a new form, and we will talk through all of that. While I'm going to walk you through all these forms, it's important that we have a context in which we put them in. And so when we put them in the context, we understand both the reason that there's the need for the changes and the flow of the forms. And basically, as a result of the state of emergency, COVID, eviction moratoriums, landlords, tenants, and judges have all been confused about the rights of the parties to the lease and the notices that need to be given. These forms serve to clarify the notice and these requirements. So they've been modified to track the Virginia law and specifically comply with the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. And we see that they address the declared state of emergency and the COVID issues. So starting with the key features in these changes, these updated forms will comply with all the necessary legal requirements. The forms comply with the now required 14-day notice. They provide the required written notice about the Virginia Rent Relief Program and how to reach 211 Virginia. The forms meet the written notice requirement related to application by landlord or tenant through the Virginia Rent Relief Program. And they outline the payment plan options and provide the tenant notice of additional requirements when the landlord owns 4 or more rental units. And finally, they provide the required notice of landlord's reservations of rights. These forms are going to ensure that landlords and tenants have provided and received the required notices, the tenant has acknowledged the notice, and in some cases, both the landlord and the tenant have provided the required information. In other words, these forms provide a very clear path for landlords and tenants to comply with the legal requirements and understand the next steps in the process. Okay, getting specific, we're going to look at the first change to the form, which is the landlord notice regarding non-payment of rent. In terms of key concepts, it's important to note this is a completely updated form. This form can be used by all landlords, regardless of the number of properties that they own. So I want to give you a visual. This is what the form is going to look like. It's going to say landlord notice regarding non-payment of rent for the lease at the top. This is a 2-page form, and here's what the second page of the form looks like. So with all forms, it's critical that they are filled out correctly and completely. And paragraph 1 is noted as tenant default. This is really important that it defines exactly how the tenant is in default, and that is inserted into the form. Paragraph 2 requires that 14-day notice, and unless the notice provides otherwise, the tenant has 14 days to pay the rent, or the landlord can terminate the lease and obtain possession. Paragraph 3 is the Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program information. This paragraph is important to kind of have an understanding of. It provides the information on the Virginia Rent and Mortgage Relief Program. It puts the tenant on notice about the program. The landlord must apply for rental assistance if the tenant has not done so. And it also requires the parties to cooperate when applying for assistance. Just to give a little bit of more information, the landlord can move to get possession if the tenant refuses to either apply or cooperate in the process, is not approved in 45 days, or the tenant further defaults. Also, this form notes that paragraph 3 does not apply if the tenant does not qualify for rental assistance, or of course, there are no more funds available for the program. Okay, moving on to paragraph 4. This is the payments options. In this paragraph, the first order of business is to determine how many rental dwellings the landlord owns. If the landlord owns more than 4, a payment plan must be offered. If not, it's at the landlord's option if they want to offer a payment plan. This paragraph is also important because it gives notice to the tenant if they fail to pay unpaid rent or enter into a payment plan within 14 days of receiving this notice, the landlord can proceed to obtain possession. Okay, in terms of paragraph 5, simply put, the landlord is not waiving any rights or remedies, and the notice is given there. Paragraph 6, this paragraph is the delivery paragraph. It states that this notice is required to be provided in accordance with both the lease and the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. So that is how all of the paragraphs work together. And of course, both the landlord and the tenant would need to sign that. In the event the landlord isn't available to sign it, their authorized agent is able to do so. So that's a review of the landlord notice regarding non-payment of rent. And now we're going to be moving on to Form K-1388. This is the payment plan addendum. It's NVAR Form K-1388, and the key concepts. This is a completely updated form. Virginia law imposes additional requirements on landlords that own 4 or more properties or more than a 10% interest in 4 or more units. And this form replaces the notice regarding the request due to economic hardship. So to give you a visual, this is a 2-page form. This is the payment plan addendum to the lease. This is the first page that's going to be active as of July 2021. This is the second page, and this is what you'll be using. Okay, the payment plan addendum for this, or NVAR Form K-1388. The first paragraph is the tenant certification. In this paragraph, the tenant must acknowledge receipt of the landlord's notice of default, so this is very important, provide a certification that they have or have not experienced additional expenses due to COVID or the state of emergency. And you should note here, if the tenant has not experienced additional expenses or the paragraph is not filled out, the addendum is void. Okay, paragraph 2. This is the payment plan. This outlines the agreed upon payment plan and how it is to be paid. The payment plan cannot include late fees as long as the payment plan is being followed. But to be clear, the fees are not waived. And then there's a section in paragraph 2 that allows additional terms to be added. Again, it's very important that these forms be completed consistently and accurately. Okay, paragraph 3. In concern that the non-payment might be an issue, this paragraph puts the tenant on notice that if they fail to make payments as outlined in the payment plan within 14 days of their due date, the landlord can provide notice of their intention to terminate the lease and proceed to obtain possession. All right, with paragraph 4, this is a reservation of rights. This puts the tenant on notice that the addendum is not a waiver of the landlord's rights, and even with partial payment, the landlord can seek to evict the tenant. Again, this is required pursuant to Virginia law. However, a full payment, including any other damages, made 48 hours prior to the eviction will actually stop the eviction. This addendum also includes language that it does not modify the lease except as specifically noted on the addendum, and the lease remains in full force and effect. Moving forward, these forms are going to be very critical for landlords who are trying to obtain possession of the property. And so it's very important that attention is being paid to how the forms are being filled out. Okay, moving on to the lease, which is probably the one that's going to be the biggest change. This is a completely updated form. It extends the notice again that the landlord must wait after serving a written notice on the tenant of their intention to terminate the lease. We see that change reflected here from the 5 days to the 14 days. We see paragraph 25 has been updated to comply with the changes in Virginia law related to the reservation of rights. And the access paragraph has been updated to comply with changes in the Virginia law regarding reasonable access during a state of emergency, which was declared by the government. This lease is a 14-page document, and with the changes to the law, landlords, tenants, and judges were having a difficult time ensuring that requirements are met. This lease clearly provides the required notices and helps all parties ensure they are complying with the law. I didn't include all 14 pages, but have highlighted some paragraphs you should look at, specifically paragraphs 6, 25, and 26. So this is the first page of the lease, so it looks familiar. And again, we see that the 721 at the bottom lets us know that we're using that right form. In terms of paragraph 6, this is the failure to pay rent. In this paragraph, again, we're seeing that 14 days notice that must be provided by the landlord. Paragraph 25 is the cost of enforcement, waiver of exemptions, severability, and statutory requirements. There are several changes in this paragraph which were necessary to comply with Virginia law. In particular, I would say look at paragraph 26D, which is entitled Redemption Rights, and it was updated to be limited to landlords who own fewer than 4 rental dwellings. Okay, so the access to premises. This is paragraph 26. This form now limits when a landlord can access the premises. This was in response to COVID and the declared state of emergency. And it was determined that a person's fear for their health is a reasonable justification for a tenant to deny access to the landlord. So that's just reflected in there. All right, so you want to make sure you're reviewing your leases, your notices of late payments, and all of the forms to make sure you're using the most updated ones and that they are the relevant ones. Again, the new form revisions will be noted as revised 721. That's the bottom of what the lease is going to look like. It's a 14-page document. Okay, the last form that we have here is form for referral agreement, NVAR Form K 1392. This is a new NVAR form which is designed to better serve members by providing a basic referral agreement for use between brokerages or to be utilized when a broker provided form is not available. The great thing about this form is it clearly defines the parties' relationships, expectations, and certainly guards against any future misunderstandings. Just one word of clarification, these forms do create contracts which could be subject to legal scrutiny. So again, it's really important to make sure they're filled out completely and consistently. Here's a visual representation of what the form is going to look like. It's a referral agreement. Okay, so what do we see here? The first paragraph is the referring brokerage information. The form requires the broker's name, address, phone, email, and EIN number. It also requires the agent's name, phone, email, and team name. So next we're going to see the receiving brokerage's information, and it's requiring the same information as we talked about above. And here we see something important, which is the customer information. Okay, it first requires that the referring agent provide, if the individual they are referring is a buyer, a seller, a tenant, or landlord, it could be multiple things potentially. They want us to state in the form the desired property type and location and the desired price range. The next part of the form requires the type of property. Is it a primary residence? Is it a secondary residence, an investment, or rental property? And also important to note here, it requires certification that the referring brokerage has obtained permission to refer the customer. Okay, next we're going to see the referral agency terms. And in this paragraph, we're going to outline the effective date with an expiration also. So again, there's clear terms. Outlines the type of commission and the timing for the payments. This is a great form, so everybody's expectations are clear and then they can be met. All right, so these changes cover all the revisions to the forms for July 2021. And I really want to thank you for allowing me to walk you through these form changes. At MBH, it is our goal to keep you ahead of the curve so that you know of the form changes, understand the reasons for the form changes, and have the tools to utilize the forms to help you serve your clients and grow your business. I hope I fulfilled those goals for you. Please know that I would love it if you reached out to me with questions or let me know how I can help with your clients. Again, my phone number and cell phone number are there, my office number, cell phone number, and my email. I hope that you will use them. Thank you all so much for this opportunity to present this today.